Welcome to the DL. This is the show where we talk about everything in the truck and equipment repair industry. It's my job to help inform and educate you on ways to help your business. We talk with technicians, business owners, associations, industry experts, manufacturers, and even a few you wouldn't think traditionally apply to your business. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the DL. I am your host, Tyler Robertson, also the CEO and founder of Diesel Laptops. This is the podcast and YouTube show where we talk about everything to do with heavy truck and equipment repair. And although we had a lot of episodes talking about other things, growing your business and all that type of stuff, today we're going to delve a little bit into the world of heavy-duty truck parts. So with me today via Zoom, all the way from Pennsylvania-ish area, I'd like to welcome Daniel Simon, product manager with Dorman Products. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks so much, Tyler. Really happy to be here.
So let's just, at first, we need to explain to everyone who Dorman is, right? Because I think a lot of people know you as the automotive company. You're in, I think, like every Napa and O'Reilly's and you guys are everywhere, right, in the automotive section. But what is Dorman doing in the HD business, and where did you guys come from? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, our heavy duty business we looked at it as really a natural extension of all the growth we had found in the light duty space. So you're right. A legacy automotive aftermarket company. We've been around for 100 plus years. Our entire vision is expanding the entire size of our respective aftermarkets, really one innovation at a time. So whether that's finding a new part that is only available at the OE or finding a high failure prone part, fixing the original problem with the OE part and then bringing that as a solution. That's really where our focus is. And back in the early 2000s, we really identified that the heavy duty space was even more linked to the dealer network, and there was a smaller scope in the aftermarket than we had seen in light duty. And for us to really continue on the growth patterns, we really needed to identify some new adjacent markets, and medium and heavy duty was a natural fit for us. So when we first entered that space, we really kept with the exact same vision and strategy to try to find product categories that are really underserved, but that make sense to be available in the heavy duty aftermarket.
So just to give everyone a sense of scale here, and I can throw these numbers out here because you guys are a publicly traded company, right? So Correct. This year, it looks like you guys are going to hit $1 billion a year in sales, which would be a new first for Dorman, which is a huge number. I know that you guys have thousands of employees. But, I was cranking out the math here before the show. And if I include weekends and holidays in there, on an average day, Dorman produces 14 new part numbers to the market. That's just an amazing amount of product to go to introduce to the market on an average day or average month. How do you guys possibly do that? How many people are out there just trying to figure out what part we make next?
Yeah, so I think that's a testament to some really phenomenal contributors as well as our structure. So we set up our entire organization in these business units that really have a lot of autonomy. And their entire focus is to go out there and find new parts, either additional gap coverage or totally new product categories that are exclusive to the dealer, and work as quickly to get those solutions out there. And I look back at it, we still have on display in our innovation team, up on the wall, we still hold a window crank handle, right? It's one of Dorman's original innovations. And to think at some point in time, not that long ago, a window crank handle for a Buick sedan was a part you could only get at the dealer. And that's really where this philosophy came from. And it's been such a wildly successful philosophy, finding these niches that the aftermarket traditionally doesn't want to service, but the dealer is able to hold on to that. So with a really laser focus on looking constantly for those kind of new categories, we're able to come out with those kind of volume parts.
So I had the privilege of touring your place up in Pennsylvania, and I was, first of all, your warehouse looks kind of like the Indiana Jones movie, where it just kind of goes on forever. And then I found that was like your small warehouse compared to the other one you guys have. But one of the departments in particular I found really fascinating, and that was the ideation department, which sounds like a department like out of a Disney movie or something, right? I love the name of it. I want to call one of our departments here the ideation department. Can you explain kind of what the ideation department is and how what they do there?
Yeah, certainly. So we actually look at our ideation department as one of our product groups. That's how important it is in terms of our success. So we are constantly focused with, boots on the ground, out walking, dealerships, maintaining relationships Our tech services line sits inside of our ideation team, and that is solely focused on supporting the end user, throwing the box away and putting an actual part on a vehicle, and continuously engaging the field to find out what those new product opportunities are for us, and allowing us to feed it out to all of our product groups to really very quickly figure out what the right solution is and bring that out.
Yeah, I was surprised just the sheer number of people that are out there just kind of giving you guys feedback all the time. And I got invited even to like a Dorman ambassadors group, and I see people out there all the time in the market saying, "Hey, Dorman, you should make this. I've seen 8 of these come through my shop in the last 2 weeks." And I know you guys have other data sources as well, I'm sure, to get that information. And it's impressive to see that, and then being able to figure out, okay, we got one guy saying this, how many possible cars are out in the market or trucks in the market that actually need this part, and calculate the ROI. There's a lot of science and math going on behind the scenes to figure all those things out. But talking about HD specifically, do you remember kind of the first products that you guys got into the HD market that led you there?
So it was before my time with Dorman, but our history in the heavy duty space was really focused on some of our best categories that we knew were not currently being serviced in the aftermarket. So it was forward lighting, headlights, coolant reservoirs, some basic sensors, some switches, some complex electronic switches or multifunction switches. They were key categories for Dorman. And then going back to some of our legacy product groups, right? Window handles and cranks and HVAC vents, some things that just don't seem like they're a big deal. But when you start adding up all the regular repairs that go on a vehicle that's getting 100,000+ miles on it a year, and if all that's going to the dealer, there's a pretty big opportunity to work on bringing all that out and bringing out a category of parts.
So some of the terminology I see on your website is like OE fix. And I remember walking through the tour when I was nice enough to get one. You guys actually try to improve the products and make them better. Like you mentioned the surge tank, so the radio, those things, and the forward lighting. Can you describe a little bit of how you guys try to make things a little bit better than maybe what started on the truck?
Yeah, and actually that's a key philosophy for us with every single part that we review. So we're going to reverse engineer it. We're going to find out what the failure mode was, and immediately we're going to try to figure out if we can fix something with it. And with OE fix, we take a couple different avenues of what we define as an OE fix. It's either going to be repairing an original OE fault that's causing high failure. Examples there are, common failure points, or maybe there's a bracket that's plastic that needs a little bit more strength. Or we're going to take something where the dealer's only offering an assembly. I've seen plenty of, say, it's the window reg that goes bad, a window regulator, but the OE is going to sell you the entire door panel, right? And the only thing that actually broke is the regulator itself. So we'll work to break that out and offer just the regulator. And then ultimately, we're going to look at what else can we provide in the package to make sure that the actual service tech that's doing this work has everything he needs. But you're exactly right. Yeah, OE Fix is a big brand for us. We actually just released our newest OE Fix guide, sort of a innovation in itself, that we have gotten such strong recognition from this whole OE Fix concept that we're actually putting out a marketing guide, sort of like a magazine of the best of all of our OE fixes across the line. And you'd be surprised by how big that book is.
Yeah. So for the most part, talking about HD, you guys aren't direct to the end user, right? So where do people go to actually buy your products and find and learn more about them?
Yeah, it's great question. So we sell, you're exactly right. We do not work directly with end customers. We're very heavily focused on aftermarket distribution. We're a legacy aftermarket company. We really are big proponents of the aftermarket model. Ultimately, we know that inventory availability and uptime is critical in this space. So having the part available pretty much anywhere in the U.S. within about 2 hours is a pretty key component. And we think our distributors do a pretty good job doing that. So we're going to continue to focus on that. So we sell through Fleet Pride, Truck Pro, Napa stores, automotive stores as well that do some medium duty or heavy duty work, pretty much across the spectrum of the heavy duty and automotive aftermarket landscapes.
So, now that we do parts stuff here, that's kind of how I got to know Dorman a little bit, through the last couple of years. And, one of the challenges I see with manufacturers, especially, there's the top tier guys, the tier one guys, right? They're getting installed on the trucks. They're in stock. They're the dominant players that are in the market today, right? You have all those guys. And for new entrants that want to come in there, it's kind of a hard grain to go against, because you have predominant players that have stock, have brand name recognition, have inventory. How do you go convince and educate an entire $34 billion a year truck parts market on, hey, there's an alternative solution here. You should look at the Dorman product. How do you guys go about doing that?
Would you believe me if I told you almost about one fleet at a time?
Honestly, it wouldn't surprise. It's a really hard thing. We get a lot of parts manufacturers we talk to, and they're like, I want to grow my business. I do Google pay-per-click. I do some Facebook stuff. But the dealers I bring on, they're selling everything. They don't care. It's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah. So look, and it's real. There is not a single, lever you can pull. There's not a single switch that fixes that. So we've really taken a holistic approach at that. It is a combination of technology. It's a combination of, marketing and branding for awareness. And I think a big piece of it is just boots on the ground. So we've got, both area managers as well as fleet specialists who are out there every day working with inventory availability at the street, but then also working directly with fleets. Again, we don't sell direct to fleets, but we are certainly going to talk to them every day. One, to get the buy-in on, the Dorman solution versus the OE, make sure that they're comfortable with the part, but then also to find out exactly what the market's looking for and try to bridge that gap between inventory availability at the street and the end user. So we'll bring that back as, hey, John's Trucking over here is, interested in this part. They're ready to go. We just need to get inventory placed for it and work to bring that through. And then from the technology side, we recognize that the bigger you get in terms of parts, the more relevant you are. But the challenge then is, I think, the days of bringing in a huge catalog of everything that you have and just saying, here, tell me what you want to buy. That's really a dying day. So, we recognize we had to get much more relevant to the actual end users. So, this is one of those benefits where, coming from the automotive aftermarket, we've really from the beginning focused on cataloging all of our parts, through the standard ACA, the Auto Care Associations, ACES and PI standards. So the nice thing there is we've got everything linked to an actual vehicle ID in the databases. So we know all of our parts, exactly what year, make, models they fit, right? We have an entire apps team behind the scenes doing that work. And so by doing that, when we go into a fleet, we can very quickly see exactly what that fleet is running. And we've invested in tools to, in an automated way, create catalogs that are specific to just the vehicles and those assets that are in those fleets. So we can work to help get, what is a growing book, like you said, 14 new parts a day, including weekends. And, the pace isn't quite as fast as that in heavy duty, but we're trying to take that, what is a really big growing book of business there, and get it as relevant as possible for the individual user, so they can select a few parts that make sense for them and bring those from the OE back to the aftermarket.
So
there's not a one solution there. It takes a dedicated effort.
Yeah. So, and I actually kind of knew a little bit about that because I was really fortunate. I was like at HDAW and I was talking to Dorman up there, and they had their suite where they bring the customers in, and there was some books there that had like customer names on them. And I was like, kind of, what's that? And when they explained to me what you just did, where you can literally walk into a fleet, it's okay, the old school way. I walk into a fleet, don't know them. Salesman's like, hey, I'm Joe from Joe's Truck Parts. What trucks you got? What could I help you with? They have no idea, right? They just come in there trying to get traction. And to see what you guys can come in with and say, look, I already know what trucks you have. I already know what parts I have that fix them. I even know how often they break down, and I already know like what you could buy them from us for and what you could buy them from the OEM. Here's how much money I can save you. That is a totally different conversation to have an initial conversation with the customer than the old way of doing things. It's got to just blow people away when you come in with that kind of information.
It does, right? And you're exactly right. The response on that has been phenomenal. And I think there's some companies out there that are doing like any of the pieces pretty well, right? Leveraging some, database work to understand, theoretically who owns what trucks, and, trying to regionally place out inventory and things like that. But our ability, what we have done behind the scenes to bring all of that together from, who the customer is, what they have, the right parts, what we think the failure rate is, and frankly, where those parts are available in the aftermarket is pretty impressive. And then I think one of the things that's nice about our model, because we're not trying to sell a part directly to a fleet, right? Because we're focused on aftermarket. When our guys are out there going into fleets direct every day, they're really coming in exactly from that model you talked about, from a more of a case study. I'm not out there I'm not walking the door, the legacy, from a parts store walking in, what trucks do you have, trying to scope. We can come in and say, these 4 things we think can move the needle for you. But look, I'm not even selling the part. I just want you to be aware of it. Can I get you samples? Can I work with you on understanding it better? And what are we missing? What's your pain point that you're having with the OE or with, another supplier? And we can bring that back to our ideation team and work on that really quickly.
So your local distributor must love it when you just walk in there and say, oh, by the way, that guy down the street, I already sold him. He's going to buy these things. You just need to put him on the shelf and here's some free business for you. Is that kind of the way the conversation goes then?
Right. Yeah. You're right. It's sort of right. I mean, but ultimately you can sit here and complain that your distributors aren't going to put the parts on the shelf and try to sell them, or you can go out there and generate the pull through demand. And we've taken a approach that says we need to do everything we can. We need to try to pull every single lever and build that awareness as quickly as possible. And I think what you're seeing from entering the heavy duty space in 2012 till now, in what is less than 10 years, I think the amount of recognition we have, some of the fleets that we're working with on a basis like that to communicate and share information, the amount of acceptance we've had in that short time is a real testament to that strategy.
Yeah. And, it surprised a lot of people I talk about parts so much because we're called diesel laptops, right? And we're selling diagnostic tools, and then we do a little bit of repair information. And I've been, beating the truck parts drum for, a year and a half here. And people are always like, why are you talking about truck parts? You're selling diagnostic tools. But I'm like, look, guys, the 3 work together. You got to have a diagnostic tool. You got to have repair information. And the piece nobody's ever put behind that is, if you're using the tool to figure out what part you need to buy, why are you not just telling people what part number you need to buy in order to fix that truck? Even the OEMs don't do it. They don't put the part number right in their service repair information. They say, I need a VGT actuator. And then you got to go to the parts counter and make phone calls and look it up. It's just insanity to me that no one's ever done that before. So I think people are going to be really impressed when our parts platform comes out. Because I think at the end of the day, you're trying to do what we're trying to do. We're trying to save people time and save people money in that shop environment.
That's right. And then people ask me, why do I spend time thinking about and talking about diagnostic ability and, and tracking abilities and parts distribution? Because ultimately we know, if we can't convince the individual shops and fleets and independent repair facilities that they can do the work, teach them where they can go to, get the diagnostic information, they're ultimately not going to be putting our parts on vehicles. So you're exactly right. It is a holistic approach. And as I look out over the 3 to 5 year horizon, if across the aftermarket industry, we can all figure that out, right? Diagnostics, distribution, and really high quality parts that, save real money against the OE. If we do that and bring all those 3 pieces together, that really changes a bit of the game here.
Well, I can tell you by the end of the year, diesel laptops will be going from fault code to part number to aftermarket alternatives with a couple of clicks of the button, never having to pick up the phone, never have to stop working. It's just going to be all right there. And I think that's what the industry needs. And I think they're really going to accept it and say, man, this is much better than my old process. Now I just got to go convince an entire HD parts industry that, hey, there's a new way of doing this that's going to be better. And that seems now, it's funny. The technology side seems easy to us. Making that perception shift is, I think, going to be the real heavy lift because our industry operates on an old model.
Right. And if the industry from the parts side were to recognize, and that's happening, right? They're recognizing what that ability can do. There's some of the tools in terms of VIN lookup and stuff like that is really starting to make its way down to the counter level. But if the counter level can integrate into that, right? So you go from fault code to the right part number. And oh, by the way, it's available at these 2 places within 15 miles in stock. It'll be delivered in an hour. And here's your price, right? Delivered. Yep. If we can get to that kind of a service level, that's exactly what you said before. That's exceeding the OE service level. And if we can do that and try to predict what customers are going to need before they're even having problems, that's a total game changer. We're excited for where the industry's going.
So the eye-opening thing here, I want people to understand the HD industry is what he just said, from allowing a person to look up their own parts, click a button, and have that part show up in 30 minutes or an hour. It sounds like a far-fetched science fantasy thing, but it happens every day in the automotive industry. Like, it is common. There are big, huge distributors with thousands of delivery vehicles, hot-shotting parts every day, all day long, making 6-8 deliveries to the same facility. Dan, Am I wrong in stating that fact?
No, but that's exactly right. I mean, because when you think about it in the automotive side, so much of the aftermarket, right? You got the DIY piece, which is important, but from the traditional side of that business, you've got a car up on the lift today. You don't know what car is coming in. It just shows up in the morning because consumers having a problem getting in, with their car, getting into work. It's on a lift. They diagnose it, and now their whole goal is to get that vehicle off the lift. So if they can't get it available in an hour, you're going to go get the OE part, charge the customer the OE part price, and move it off. But the aftermarket has recognized that their best ability to sell parts into that service channel is to make sure that all those parts are available in about an hour or less, right? It's all about, uptime. And that's probably even a more critical issue in the heavy duty space where, if it's my personal vehicle, maybe I can work from home for a couple of days a week. In this COVID environment, I certainly don't want to work from home anymore, but, I have that luxury. But, when you're running a business, you got contracts to maintain. You got, maybe you got refrigerated food in the back of a trailer. You got a real issue here if you're down. So uptime is critical, and having those parts available and a model that can see what the demand is and get a part delivered out immediately. That really changes things here.
Yeah. And, again, the point I always prove to people is when you look at auto to truck, right, those markets, trucks consistently been behind about 10 years, right? You can look at emission requirements. You can look at safety features, ADAS, all that stuff. That's been going on for a decade, ADAS in cars, right? Mm-hmm. It's just finally getting some traction in trucks. The technology, the diagnostic tools, the right to repair, which we'll talk about here in a second, but all that stuff's constantly 10 years behind. So when I tell people, I really think people have the ability to use an app or a web page to order something and it's going to show up and you're going to have multiple options and price points in front of you. I think it's going to be a game changer in the industry. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see how long it takes to happen. But let's go back to right to repair for a second. So, I mean, you guys are essentially taking, hey, this OE part, it's no good anymore. I'm making an aftermarket alternative. You used the word reverse engineering earlier, right? Some people think, oh, reverse engineering, that's illegal. You can't do that stuff. Can you give a little color on what reverse engineering actually is and why it's a good thing?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, we really reverse engineer because what we're trying to find when we get a part in, right? So you talked about our forums, right? So yeah, Dorman is pretty in the forefront of trying to bring together service professionals across the country into some forums that we have to get that information of, like I said, someone seeing, 8 parts coming through a shop, obviously this is a problem. So we could come out and just, find a version of that off the shelf somewhere and release the same part. But it's probably going to have the same problem, right? So our whole goal with reverse engineering is to try to get down to the bottom of what is causing that high failure rate, right? And ultimately to not only figure it out, but to engineer it out. So our engineers are not only experts in reverse engineering out to break a part down to figure out exactly how it's made, but we're really trying to diagnose why that part is failing. Is it something that's having too much friction, causing, heat buildup in an area that's causing something else to fail? Whatever that looks like, the goal is to get that out and to totally redesign it in a way that's going to be, a better function. But then the right to repair side is critical because if, consumers, especially on the software side of vehicles, are sort of locked out of their vehicles, or on the heavy duty side, if you're locked out of your truck, you can't diagnose the faults, you can't figure out what's wrong. Then there's a whole other issue with, do you even own your truck, right? Do you even have the right to repair it? And ultimately, we in the aftermarket have been, very strong in saying, yes, right? You buy a vehicle, you have the right to repair it in any way. And I think right to repair has come a long way over the last, 30 years. There was a point where the OEs would try to say, well, if you repaired your vehicle at all, it was out of warranty. And obviously that's been, for the most part, challenged and knocked down. But, now as we look to the future with how much software is embedded in vehicles now, and with, how much diagnostics are controlled by the vehicle software, it's critical to maintain access in there to figure out what's going on.
So, you mentioned that whole thing with OEs, and, I can tell you, I don't think a lot of OEMs really like what Diesel Laptops does. We get letters once in a while from attorneys. I'm assuming Dorman's the same way. They may not like what you guys are doing in some situations, but it does come down to what's best for the customer in a lot of cases. So this literally just happened here at Diesel Laptops, where we have some big clients that are buying these multi-brand off-highway diagnostic machines. And one particular OEM went to the 3 biggest ones that we deal with and said, look, we know you're buying from Diesel Laptops. We know what tool they have. We know what it does. We also know what it doesn't do. But every time you guys connect it, it's going to avoid your warranty on this particular engine or equipment that you bought from us. And in all three cases, we were kind of worried when they called us, but in all three cases, these people buying that equipment just pushed back and was like, well, first of all, what you're telling us is a lie. That's not true at all. You can't avoid your warranty by using an aftermarket diagnostic tool. And two, if you guys want to keep selling us your equipment, you guys better figure this out real quick instead of come crying to us, because we're not going that direction anymore. Do you guys get a lot of pushback from the OEMs, or do you see them trying to do a lot of things to prevent you guys from doing your job in the aftermarket space? Or what's it like working with those guys?
Yeah, so there's a couple sides of that. I mean, yes, we get pushback all the time. So one of the things we see is the patents around products. So you'll get design patents, you get functional patents. So we'll be really aggressive on that. So every time a part goes through our review, we have patent attorneys on site who are going to look at that to determine if it's patented today. And if so, can we find a way to design our own version that's going to be safe from that patent? And can we actually improve upon the original patent and ultimately put our own intellectual property on it? Then the second piece of that is exactly what you said there, which is, right to repair, the diagnostic side. Can I get into the platform? Can I use third-party software to figure out what's going on my vehicle? Or does the OE have to be the one to diagnose? Now your point there, you really hit where there's a little more leeway in heavy duty, because a lot of the purchasers of heavy duty vehicles are not individual consumers, but are large businesses. A lot of them came back when a lot of the diagnostics first started picking up and said, look, this is great, put it in there. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't give me, free access to it, I'm going to go over to your competitor and place, my 1,000 power unit order with them. So, thankfully that market dynamic has helped a little bit on the access side. And then software is the last piece, right? So you obviously can't just take someone else's software and use it as your own. And everything's getting more and more complex. It used to be that, say, a window switch was just a window switch, right? It was the actual physical switch. Well, now for a number of them, you've got the actual module mounted right onto the bottom of that, so that you have to have your own programming in it. So instead of the vehicle controlling, the anti-pinch and the speed and all that, the actual switch is going to have a module in there. So when I look at Dorman, I'm just incredibly proud that I would say over the last 10 years, we went from, really reverse engineering mechanical components. And what we're now seeing is our own design created software that our software engineers are creating. And we're seeing that in other products out in the market, where we're now having to go out and protect our own intellectual property in our own software development.
Yeah, it's really crazy how things are, moving again from truck. I see automotive, right? You place a door switch on automotive, you gotta do some programming event to make that thing work, and that traditionally hasn't happened in truck, but it is there for some things. And I know you guys recently came with a VGT actuator, and there's some other ones. Those things do require calibrations once they're installed on the vehicle. And you talked about the software side, same thing. We have software now that can do DPF regens and change parameters, and people are like, man, how do you get away with that? I'm like, well, there's nothing illegal about us making our own code to do the same thing that somebody else's software has done. Now, we can't go take that software and crack it and copy paste and put it in and say, oh, we did it. You got to do it in a right legal way, but that's totally along those lines. So you talk about some of the complex electronics. Do you mind talking about the VGT actuator that you happen to mention?
Yeah, that's a great example. So you're exactly right. The VGT actuator is one of our first parts that does require OEM level or OEM service grade, calibration work. So the VGT actuator, it's a plug and play component, but that actuator does need to be calibrated to the turbo itself. So what we found is a lot of people in the market figured that, okay, I could go get the aftermarket part, but I'm going to have to still take the truck over to the dealer to get it calibrated. And the dealer's going to push back saying, well, it's not a genuine part, so we're not going to do it. But what we're focused now on is saying, we have to just work harder, right? We've got to recognize that the person throwing the box away has to do another step. We've got to work with companies like Diesel Laptops to train them, teach them how to do that work, show them that the OEM level software is available out there, and working together, make sure that information is available and the actual software to do that kind of calibration is available as well.
Well, it's been impressive to watch Dorman grow through the years. I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago that I actually saw my first Dorman catalog and was like, man, they're making some cool stuff. And obviously follow you guys. I'm on, I got invited to the Dorman Ambassador group on Facebook and those types of things. So it's just really cool to see how it all works, not really on the diagnostic side, which we're into, and the repair side, but actually the parts side. And, I think it's a better thing for the customer at the end of the day to have options. And that's really what it comes down to, is saying, look, that used to be dealer only. Now you have a second option. It's a high quality option. It's going to save you some money. Typically, your guys are priced below the OEM level, right? So it gives them customers some peace of mind and saves them some money, and they got a great product name to stand behind it. So, Daniel, if people want to learn more about Dorman or Dorman HD or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so our website's dormanproducts.com, and on the HD side, it's dormanhdsolutions.com. Any questions direct, my name is Daniel Simon. My email address is dsimon@dormanproducts.com. We'd love to hear from you guys, engage with anyone, and tell you more about what we're doing and see what we're missing that's needed that right now is stuck at the dealer.
Well, hey, you guys got a great thing going there at Dorman. It's been, like I said, a pleasure to watch you guys grow. I know we're working on some different projects with Dorman. We love what's going on. We're pro aftermarket. You guys are pro aftermarket. And anytime we can find people like that, I think is a great thing for everyone. So there you go, guys. Another great episode. Again, thank you to Daniel for coming on the episode. And, I can always say it's diagnostics done right, but it's also parts done right. You got to have the right parts to fix your truck. Take a look at Dorman next time you're needing something. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you very much for watching and listening.